So those are the, and yeah, so that's one, does that help, is that helpful?
So,
Mostly it's a
schedule.
skill,
Yeah.
communication practice, set aside a time.
Can't, keep it as a priority. The frequency may change, but keep that as part of your marriage. It's very important that it stays.
I have this other thing that I didn't tell you about.
Uh-oh.
There are gonna be times when one of you, it will be either one of you, depending, is gonna have a desire, and the other one just does not have it. And what someone told me that was very helpful reminded me, and this is not pervy, but that God is there blessing you when you're experiencing marital sex together. It's God who knits the baby in the womb. He's there, right? So the first thing that you can do is ask God for the thrill to bless your spouse with. Lord, help me to thrill at my spouse's touch. Help me to thrill him with my response. The second thing that I want to say is that when I say all of life is worship, someone's sad. I'm sorry. Even the giving of your body to your spouse is an act of worship. Now that's so far from the world's view, but it is. And if you need to, there are times when you must say and can say and have the right to say, Lord, it's an act of worship. I'm giving my body to you and to my spouse. Glorify yourself. And I've found some freedom in that myself. Okay,
That's good. Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Are we courageous or bold enough to ask on that topic, or should we move on?
Hypothetical. But like, say somebody in marriage has had a traumatic experience around sexual intimacy.
Yes.
What is your guys' advice for like working through that? Because that's hard.
Yes.
First of all, being able to talk about so that both of you are very aware, and then patience, caring, gentle patience. I would say probably talking to a good Christian counselor to help deal with the trauma that came, and not if there was real trauma, usually it's not going to just go away. So to address it and be able to find some freedom from that, I think would be a part of that. What can happen sometimes in that is that it makes sex a bad thing because it was such a bad experience or a traumatic experience. So there has to be some relearning sometimes about, no, this is actually a gift from God. God intended this for good. That was bad. And be able to distinguish between the two. But a lot of times things like that take longer than we want. But it's worth patiently walking through. But I would say with some help usually is a way to do that.
Part of what I just said came out of this very conversation. I want to say to you what I said to the person I was talking to, which is one of the names for the Lord is our Redeemer. And I want to assure you that even in this, your Redeemer is faithful, he's true, and he will redeem. He can. Now, the timing, I don't know. But I can tell you, your Redeemer's faithful and true. I think there are times when you have only one option, where could I go but to the Lord? And that is when we offer our bodies. You know. I'm looking at you as if you asked this question for yourself, but I should be looking at all of you because all of you. And I just want you to know what I just said. That you are.
It's a good, very good question.
Your God is faithful and true. The person you married, my assumption is that they knew going in that this was there. One of the things about injuries is a lot of times you don't know how injured you are at the time. You discover more depths of the injury. And that leaves the other person going, well, I thought I understood, but wow, I had no idea what I was getting into. But your vow is to give to one another. And so you're going to give, and he is going to give. And together, you're going to work. You're going to find ways to be affectionate. I told Keith this a while ago. It's really important, y'all, men, to learn how to give affection without it leading to the demand for sex every time. It's real important to learn that. And as you learn that, you're building trust in your wife. Just as you did before you got married, you need to continue to woo your wife, to be able to say, I can control my desires for you, my desire is for now, but I love you enough to wait. And ladies, it is imperative on you to learn how to trust your husband and to respect your husband's needs and to deal with whatever it is to pursue healing. I'm going to say it that way. Pursue healing. Okay? And I hope that doesn't sound like platitudes, because it could, but I don't want it to. It's just like the reality.
No, that's good. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for asking.
I have
Great.
a question.
Go ahead.
Potentially spicy, you guys don't have to answer if you don't feel comfortable. I am curious of your opinion on vasectomies and like the biblical nature of you. Don't have any opinion or. Everyone already knows.
I'm personally more in favor of the
I
women.
don't know. I just can't help but notice somebody in this room, their face is like turned really deep red right at this moment. Anyway, go ahead.
I'm more in favor of women having to do that.
It is free if you get it done during a
Yeah.
Exactly. That's how we know. That's what we know.
Okay.
We grew up in a place where when we were having our babies in Monmouth. At that time, we were surrounded by people who were part of what is now called the Quiverful movement, which basically said, if you don't trust Jesus with your birth control, you are sinning against God, and blah, 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 blah. And it messed with my head a little bit. And, you know, I think y'all heard in our story, we had 3 unplanned pregnancies in 4 years. And we had a lot of reproductive health left by the time we had our 3rd kid. And everybody said, after the 3rd one, it's just so easy after the 3rd one. But we were not willing to test that by having more, you know. And I was sick. I was bad.
So she was very sick for all 9 months every time. So there was her health to consider
It
as
was a
well.
lot. In the end, so there were a lot of people saying, you know, sinning, and then there were other people like, put a stop to this. And one lady said, don't let the husband get a vasectomy because it just gives him a license to cheat because he doesn't have to worry about getting his mistress pregnant, which I thought was really creepy. But in the end, our opinion is
People.
talk to the Lord, listen to the Lord, and do
And talk to each other.
whatever the Lord tells you. Talk to the Lord, talk to each other, and it's nobody else's beeswax.
Yeah.
Period. Are you free to do it? Yes. You're free. Is it a sin? I don't think so. If it is a sin, when Jesus died on the cross, he paid for all your sin. And that's,
Careful.
you have to be careful there.
But you do have to consider all those factors. Your health, everything, in my opinion, as you're making those decisions.
I don't know that the Bible talks about vasectomies. It talks about spilling your seed on the ground. But that's in like Leviticus.
Yeah, it does.
Any other questions? I was going to transition us back to the unique role of the wife in marriage. There's
To
no
talk
reason we
about
have to do that
sex.
After vasectomy talk. Okay, what is the unique role of the wife in marriage?
Why are you looking at me?
I only did the husband part.
Oh, okay, I'll do my part. The unique role of wife, first of all, since we've just been talking about sex, is to bring sexual pleasure to her husband. You don't want anyone else doing that. So you do that. Also, to work as a team with her husband, to travel the course that you've set. I hope you heard what I just said in a way that, so in some things that just means to get things done. Sometimes it means to monitor the state of things and help them function, to problem solve. After this, it doesn't matter who does what. But life goes on and things have to be created or fed or maintained or taken to the doctor. And you have to work together to learn to carry these loads. We want to make sure that we don't live assuming that we're carrying the heavier load. We always want to check in to make sure that we're rowing this boat together.
There might be seasons where one of us has to
Yes.
carry more than the other,
Yes.
but over the long haul.
I want to just gather your guys' thoughts. Like, I know this has changed a lot over the past many decades, but does the mom have like a unique role in raising the kids, or is that a shared role? Like, how is that shared? What if our moms are ambitious and they want to work outside the home? How should we think about things like that?
First initial thoughts are what I said earlier is you, first of all, are responsible for the children in your home. You're responsible before God. And so you have to make those decisions. No one should make them for you. And that's the first thing. We are not ones to say, here's what everyone should do or shouldn't do. We just don't do that. But we would say, when at all possible, and for us, Beverly didn't work until late high school for Lane, because she got a job to help put our kids through college. And so all of that time, one of the reasons we were poor is that we didn't have a second income, and that was a choice. But the main thing was, if at all possible, we wanted us to be the first influence in the shaping influence of our children. Does that make sense? Now, we're not against women working outside the home. That was just the choice that we made. Now, we also know couples that the wife has a part-time job, and it's a real blessing. It gives some mental, something else to think about for a period of time, kind of recharges them to be a mom, and those are good scenarios. There are certain cities that people live in that it pretty much takes a double income to survive. You've got to consider that. I think our leaning would be to do what you can to be, for the mother and father to be the primary influences in that. And the mom does have a unique role in the shaping of a child that no one else has, not even the father, and vice versa. So we would say that, but how would you?
I would say, in addition to what he said, being in agreement about that is the most important thing. Also, I just want to say for a second a little thing about identity. We spend a lot of time talking to people about identity. And so the question is, so in terms of being able to afford to live wherever you live, you do one of two things. You spend less or you make more. Those are your two options. So if you're in a place or a season, there are seasons, it might be school debt, it might be somebody had to have an emergency tonsillectomy in a non-network hospital, or something, or an ambulance ride, or the car broke, or so there's something that happens, and so nothing is permanent. That's what I'm just trying to say. There may be seasons where this is more important, or not more important, but we've just got to do this for now, and that means to add income. So that either means that the mom takes a job, or it means the dad takes another job. Which one of those is better? They're both horribly hard. And so you need to be in agreement and understand the costs of what happens. The most important thing, though, I think, is the why. What is it that you want? What are you going for? What is it that you're trying to afford? If your identity is not firmly grounded in who you are in Christ, you're going to see your next door neighbor's new couch, or their hot tub, or their car with the seat heaters, and you're going to say, why don't we have that? Or those amazing strollers that go from car seat to stroller. Oh my soul, they're the greatest things. But they're like hugely expensive, right? And so you have to decide what is. Keith taught me this saying: saying yes to one thing means saying no to something else. If you do not have your identity firmly grounded in Jesus, you're going to be pulled this way, you're going to be pulled that way. And so, should the mom work? Does the mom feel like being at home is a waste of brain cells? So she wants to go out there and make a paycheck because she's not a real person? Most of you are in a generation, well, you're all the same age. So your parents were in a generation that were the first generation to be taught the woman has no value unless she's out of the house. So if you're getting pressure from that, that's why, because that was passionately taught to my generation. Okay, but if you need to work outside the home because you're not a person, I just need you to reevaluate what you're doing inside the home. Because for me, it took every bit of creativity and wisdom and intelligence and everything I had within me to make our home run. And so, but I'm average, and so some of you might be above average, and so you might need to do more than that. And if that's so, then make sure you're in agreement, and make sure that your alignment and your motivation is to bring glory to the Lord in what you do. We've never had matching furniture in our whole life, ever. And it's amazing how much use we've gotten out of our non-matching furniture.
And so we're fine with that.
Yeah.
Mainly, what I say is our family loves each other now as the adults, and that was worth having old furniture for.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying, I didn't mean that to say you should never work out of the home. I'm just saying some things that the world shows as really, really important are just not that important.
You guys both separately just now mentioned coming to an agreement on all those things, and I was actually about to ask about just how to make decisions together. So I want to just ask, how do you come to agreement, and what do you do if you're not in agreement, and what kind of conversations does that take?
How do we do that? We've not had a ton of trouble coming to agreements. I think partly because we do have a common purpose to live our lives, to honor the Lord,
Yeah.
to obey Him no matter what that means. And so when we have a unified purpose, it helps with a lot of the other smaller decisions. But when we do have to make decisions, which we do, if at all possible, we both come trying to hold it loosely with our hands open. Remember, you mentioned Corrie ten Boom before. Corrie ten Boom said, the Lord has taught me to hold things loosely because I have found that it hurts when He has to pry my fingers open. That shaped me a lot. That statement shaped me a lot. So I do my very best, and she does her best, that when we're coming to something, even if it's very important to us, we're trying to hold it like this, to see the other person's perspective and to see what the Lord wants. And most of the time, we've been able to come to agreement on things. If there's a few times that we haven't, I have to carry the responsibility to make a decision. For us, those times just haven't been that often.
And I have to make the determination to not be a jerk about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's not always easy. Mostly though, there's only been a few times where we have really been opposed in what we thought. And those are times when I personally have to make sure, I want to be clear. I want to say, I do not agree with this decision, but I see this is, this is the way you feel like we were going to go. And I've made the commitment out loud to Him. So I'm going to follow you. I'm going to make it happen because this is what you feel like we should do. And I promise you, I am not going to be a jerk about it to you. And when we moved from Troutdale to Gresham, when we changed churches, that was a big moment for me. And I have to remember that I have the Lord who's going to make all things right. And so I know that sounds real holy. It's not holy, it's desperate. And yeah. So.
And I think too, in the discussion, there's always, I think asking the question why is always important. From why did I just get angry to why do we want to do this? Really knowing the why and being honest about the why helps you make good decisions.
Do you know 5 whys from manufacturing? You know that idea, the 5 whys? It's a thing you do in problem solving in manufacturing, the 5 whys. So you say, why do we have this problem? And then you come up with an answer. But you don't stop there. You say, well, why is this answer the way it is? And then you come and you figure that. And then you say, well, why is this? And you ask why 5 times. And you keep exploring. You drill down, and usually by the 5th why, you get to the root cause. And that gives you wisdom to the future.
And that applies
Everything.
to everything.
And in big decisions, sometimes people talk about the 2 yes, 1 no. 2 yes, 1 no, which is 2 yeses is a yes, 1 yes and 1 no is a no. So sometimes it's about timing. So sometimes it's not, we have this big decision, we want to do X, Y, or Z, and one person is going, no, this is not right. And we're going to have to trust that it's a timing issue and maybe wait.
And wait, if at all possible.
Very few things are so urgent that you have to decide today.
I feel like like it should be pretty rare that you come to a decision and it's not the same decision and the male makes the final call. But can you be more explicit on what those decisions, if you feel comfortable sharing, like what those decisions were whenever y'all weren't in alignment? Like, because I can't imagine it would have to be something like very large for.
Well, it was
Was it the move?
It was the move from one community to another to pastor a different church. We were not at odds. It's just something she didn't want to do.
I did not want to do it.
I didn't really want to do it, except I believed that the Lord was leading us to
And
do
I
it.
got no personal word. And so I had to only trust on his word.
We've never done it like over a car, for example, which is not small.
Right.
But
We
if,
did do it over a washing machine once.
we didn't buy the gold one.
I know, but only because the Lord intervened.
It doesn't matter what color your washing machine is.
Our washing machine broke when we had 3 children under 5. And we had no money.
And I was like,
We were
It's
on
right
a
here.
first name basis with Rob from Gresham Appliance, who kept coming to fix our washing machine. And he looked at me and he said, listen, I can fix this again, but I gotta tell you, it's just gonna break in a couple of weeks. It's time for you to get a new washer. And I was like, okay. And so, there's another story, I'm skipping it for time's sake, congratulations.
thank you, way to go.
So
Great job.
Keith says, looks at our finance, says, we cannot afford a new washing machine. We're going to have to buy a used washing machine. And I'm sorry, y'all, I was a little bit of a princess, and the thought of buying someone else's used washing machine grossed me out, because I was a princess at the time. And it made me sick to my stomach. And I didn't want, but we were gonna have to
But
go
we
into
didn't
major
have a
debt, but we
choice, yeah.
didn't have a choice, we didn't have a choice. So we go to Gresham Appliance, and they have one washing machine that's available, and it is Harvest Gold. Now, see, they understand.
Yeah,
Hitting a
And
little
so-
close to home over here.
sorry.
So
Harvest
what
Gold
is-
is from the 70s, by the
Okay,
way, yeah.
and so, yeah, and this is in the 90s, and, okay, so I'm like, Harvest Gold, this is, and he's like, well, nobody's gonna see it. He's trying to comfort me. Nobody's gonna see it. And I'm like, hi, I'm going to see it. Because I have 3 children, and I wash about 5 loads of laundry every day, and I am so sad. And so we had to go, and he's like, no, we have to do this. And I'm like, I don't want to do this. This is not what we need to do. Back, forth. And so I had to yield. So I yielded. Because he's, sometimes it comes to this decision. So I offered it to the Lord. I make the vow, I will not gripe to you. And I was kind of, I'm not going to gripe about the ugly washing machine. So we marched down to Gresham Appliance. We walk in, say, we're here to get the gold washing machine. And he looks right at me and says, do you want a gold washer? And I was like, because I had just vowed not to complain. But also, no, I don't want a gold washer. And he said, because a white one just came in. And we can just, the Lord is so kind. Now, God
But
doesn't always do
that
that.
was a long story where we almost did.
Yeah.
I can't,
There was homeschooling, there was some stuff about Lane, what to do with, when Lane our son was having a really hard time trying to figure out if he should go to school or stay home, go to college or stay home. It was a big deal, and those are about figuring out whether to homeschool or not was a big thing.
but we really did come together on it, so,
Me getting a job, I guess.
yeah. So we don't have much, at least on our memory, yeah.
Okay, I have 2 more questions, then I'll turn it over to the room for a few more. I wanted to ask, just for this room, we, at least most of us, are graduated from college, at least a couple years removed from college, and in this season of life, it's really tempting to just grow kind of discontent. Like life's not, our friendships aren't what they were a couple years ago, or we don't have as much time as we had a couple years ago. And so I just want to ask, how would you speak to this? How can we cultivate contentment in this season of life?
I have 2 initial thoughts. One is, I think we underestimate the difficulty of the transition from college to the rest of life. Seems like we only talk about it in the sense of you're going to get a new job and have an income. But but it often doesn't go like that. And even when it does, so much of life changes. But as you already know and already knew, the rest of life is not going to be like the 4 or 5 years of college. It's very special, those 4 or 5 years. But relationships slow down, ministry is slower, and the weight of life doesn't come on gradually. It sort of like comes down on you like that. And I think there's a part of us, we hate that. We hate the weight and the pain of life, and we want the pain to end, and we think something's wrong. And what I would say to you, the weight and the pain of what you're experiencing is not wrong. It's not because you've done something wrong that if you can adjust it, it would just be better. This is life. Now, you do get, as you get older, you do learn how to live under the weight. But it's kind of a shocking adjustment, I think, that we just don't prepare for. I think that's where I think Craig Lovelace is doing a great thing in this, what's the name of the? Aftergrad, in that preparation of what we're trying to do, because, boy, life comes. And so I think that's a piece of it. I would secondly say contentment is a choice. We tend to think that contentment is a result. That if certain things all fit together a certain way, then I can be content. Contentment is about my relationship with the Lord. If Psalm 23 is true, boy, easier said than done. But if Psalm 23 is true, the Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. Then we have to decide every day whether that's true. Because it doesn't feel true. I feel like I lack a lot of things. But if the Lord is in my life, if he's my shepherd, then he knows what I need. And so that's part of when Paul says, I have learned to be content. Learned. It's something we learn. It's a choice that we learn. Anything?
I think that's exactly right.
That's good. Yeah, I'm glad you kind of hit multiple areas of life, because it's friendships, it's ministry. I'm glad you hit ministry too, because I thought the same thing. I thought our relationship with the church feels so different than it did just a couple years ago. We used to be able to serve and give 20 hours a week to the church, and now we can give 2, and so we don't feel great about that. And I think what you said was so good.
It has to be different. I've had 2 or 3 conversations today. When you get married, you need to give time to your marriage. You can't give as much time to the church. You still need to give time to ministry, but it's got to look different. And it's right that it does, but it sort of feels like we go into it blind. We don't go blind, we go into it blind.
Yeah. Okay, my last question is, thinking about everything you guys have said in the last couple days, like all of us across this room are going to implement it differently. Like some of us are going to discipline one way, some of us are going to do that another way. Some of us are going to make decisions one way, some are another way. And so I just want to ask, like, how can we stay united as a church? Like, is it okay that we're different? And is it okay that we do all of those things differently? How can we be united amidst that?
Well, one thing we talked about yesterday is there is a very big difference between unity and uniformity. And you do not have to have uniformity to be unified. I would even say, I don't think you want that. I don't think you want uniformity, and I don't even think it's possible, because God's made us different on purpose. But being a part of something that is as important as what we're doing, of making disciples and impacting the lives of people, both at college, when they come to college, and it's going to impact them for the rest of their lives, and impacting people your age. In most of America, people your age are being missed in churches. And what you're being a part of, like I said, for marriage, it's the same thing that can unify you. It's that we're called to love the Lord and to make disciples. And how we make choices in the midst of that, we can give each other room, we can love each other, we can help each other. We don't have to tell each other, you do it like I do it, because there's a bigger purpose, there's a bigger goal. That would be at least part of what my initial thought is to that. Anything you would?
I think, again, unity and uniformity are not the same thing. We stay unified when we remember who the Lord is. I'm a broken record. When we press into the Lord, when we remember whose we are and who we are in light of whose we are, that keeps the mission first. When we follow the words of Jesus, work on removing the log out of our own eye before we try to mess with the speck in someone else's. We need to remember at the same time that we are pressing into the Lord, that every person that we come across is someone that the Lord loves as well, and to treat them as such. When we point each other towards Jesus, that is what keeps us unified. We keep making the focus the focus.
That's great. Yeah, thank you guys. Are there any other burning questions before we move on?
This isn't burning, but I have a fun-ish one. You guys were talking about your differences and how God made each of us uniquely, which makes our marriages unique. What have you learned about each of your unique qualities and what makes your marriage unique in that way? And how have you navigated your differences in personality?
You have to do my adjusting.
I don't think that's true. That she said I have to do more adjusting than she does. I don't think that's true. For a long time, what I'm about to say might just sound very normal, but I don't have a whole lot of words. I don't have a ton of words. I tend to be really quiet. And she has more.
Maybe you noticed.
And however, we've been able to kind of find a place of freedom in that. What was the question? How have we
Seeing our differences.
Navigated your unique differences, or what have you learned about your differences? Or embraced?
I think for me, we talk about sometimes managing tensions. There's a part in me that makes her want to be the way I want her to be in a moment, in a certain moment. Here's how I think you should be. But at the same time, I'm more committed to I want her to be who she is. And so I think we've really worked hard over the last few decades to let the other person be who they are. We really have tried to do that. And that's a decision you make over and over. Sometimes it's a decision you make right in the moment. Like when she says I'm giving her that look. That look is terror for me because I don't know what she's about to say. And but that's who she is. And so I've only had to go to jail because of that a couple of times, but no. The bigger question is, though, let her be her as she lets me be me.
I'll just share something Keith told me a couple years ago. You don't even remember this probably, but in that same vein.
I'm very curious.
I'm gonna make up a story. In our first year of marriage, with me and Molly, we had just moved to Bozeman and planted a church, and we've been married 9 months. And I remember Keith and I got breakfast one day, and I was just like, "Here's what's wrong with Molly. Here's what I'm mad about," listing off her faults. And this is what you said to me, and I'll always remember it. You said, "Well, Alex, you can love her as she is, or you can be mad forever." And I was just like, All right, Keith, thank you.
I said that to
You
you.
said that to me, yeah.
I do not have a memory of that.
Yeah.
That's pretty bold.
Maybe the Holy Spirit. Just
Wow.
30 years ago. So I've shared that with so many couples. Like since then, I have to have that thought probably. I mean, it's more rare now than it used to be, but I have that thought frequently. So that's good.
Yeah.
Keith, in your pursuit of Bev, was there ever a moment where you were like, okay, I know her, done, don't need to explore that well anymore, like I know my wife? And if so, what did you do to just keep digging?
If I did, it was like I have alluded to other things before, it was that I drifted into that. It wasn't a conscious
Right.
thing. But I have at times drifted into not discovering
Right.
and not continuing to do that. But either I would just be reminded by her or by situations or by the Lord. And like last year, we said this in our breakout. Last year, this is no big deal, but we both found out we both love Pop-Tarts. And it was like, how did we not know this? You like Pop-Tarts? You like Pop-Tarts? And it's been terrible for my weight, but but it was so fun because we're like, what else have we still not discovered? So I don't really feel. I don't feel like we've kind of hit like a dead end.
Right.
I don't want to. So I didn't really answer
You answered part of it, yeah.
part of it. Yeah. Yeah, best I could.
Well, she's gonna keep changing.
Well, that's
so-
true.
So you may know all of it now, probably not as much as you think, but even if you do, there's more to come. Keep reading.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you know who Jeff Orges? He was the president of Gateway Seminary, and now he's
Okay.
at SBC. But he's a close friend. But he says, I've been married to 3 different women, but it's the same wife. And then he describes how she's changed from when they got married to and so that discovery has been there. And I think that's probably true for all of us in some way like that.
I have a question about something, I honestly can't remember if it was today or yesterday.
Sure.
But you were talking about just what we have, like spiritual cousins, like spiritual aunts and uncles, how special this is, like what we have. I totally agree. And you were talking about it, referencing like the desire or like the urge to like find a church with the better children's ministry or
Yeah.
whatever, because you're trying to do the best thing for your kid or whatever.
Right.
That this is so special. How would you, like, what encouragement or like wisdom would you give us, not with the children's ministry, but at like almost parental ministry, like learning from people who are steps ahead of us in parenting and marriage and all of that. Like all of us are basically in a very similar. Our oldest kid is 5, and they're all that and whatever. And you've seen how many there are. We're all kind of feel like we're in a pretty similar boat, or at least that's how I feel. So what's your like advice or wisdom or whatever for finding that like mentorship? You mentioned that briefly, but I'm like, where?
Okay.
Like how?
Yeah, where do we
I love
do
that, but I don't know where to find it.
Yeah, I think sometimes they're in our lives, we just haven't thought about that, so I'd ask the Lord for clarity. I think about like Sasha, who's someone down the road. It can be people in other churches, but I really am serious about asking the Lord to show me or to bring a relationship, those kind of relationships in. I think He cares about that. And so that's really a starting place for me. Even within Resonate, when she gets a little bit healthier, you've got Paige. You've got,
April.
April Young, man, she's got some rich resources there, Beverly. There are a few others. Even like Jess Dahl, Hudson is now 9 or 10, so that's another season than you are, where there's a few even within Resonate that I think you could start with. And so that's people. But the other part is, even if you're with somebody for one evening, ask them a question. Just always be a question asker, but always be a learner. If there's somebody whose life looks, their parenting life, their children, what you see looks the way you want to learn from, go ask a question. It doesn't have to be a long-term relationship to learn something. So both and.
Kind of like what this space is providing. Like if we continue to do this once a year.
Yep,
Exactly.
you could do that. That's a great thought.
And this isn't what you're saying, but I think all of that is good. We should have mentors. But I also just think like we can learn things from each other too. Like I think we should be asking each other questions and
Yeah.
learning.
I think a really healthy atmosphere would be to learn from our failures and even each other's failures. And that's where that gets so hard when it comes to parenting, because we really don't want people to know of our failures, because I feel like a failure when something's not gone well with my kids. But successes and failures among each other, you're just going to learn. You have an opportunity to see a little more inside someone's life than a lot of people do, and you can really learn. Here's what I wish I'd have done different.
And especially in that, Alex, what you're talking about, that's what I was gonna say is, you are listening, you're learning, hey, I heard this, what do y'all think about this, to talk about it. But learning, as you are learning together, the Bible says that the Lord is your teacher, right? And so let him use whoever, but also foster an environment that makes honest discussion possible.
Yeah.
And I'm just gonna talk to the girls here for a minute. Girls, you've got a mouth on you. I'm not the only mouth, okay? And so you need to really be willing to say, was I just kind of sassy just then? Was that a little bit judgmental then? Am I coming across?
She does that with me now sometimes. Just
Because
asking.
I realized, in fact, the other day, I had this great idea, and I was telling Keith, I was doing it in front of our son, and I said it the first time, I didn't think he heard me, so I said it again, and my son goes, please? And I was like, oh, was I sounding bossy?
Like she was commanding me to do something.
And I wasn't, okay? All of us do that. And so you need to be very careful that the decisions that you've come to, you're not saying, if you're not like me, you hate your children, or your children are going to go to the penitentiary, or you are less than, or because your kid is a bulldozer and my child is a little princess ballerina. Well, Miss Princess Ballerina, wait till you have a boy before you start talking to the bulldozer. You just wait, you know. Let's be kind to one another, tender-hearted and compassionate, forgiving one another, even as Christ has forgiven us. I'm pointing at the screen from yesterday, as I'm sure you're all aware.
What may be just as prevalent too is like, rather than being judgmental, is feeling insecure. Like
Yes.
feeling as
Yeah.
if I'm being judged.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah. Identity.
Yeah.
The beauty of having older mentors, they don't feel that judgment, but you're probably learning from their mistakes,
Mhm.
right? Anytime you sit down.
How
with
many
people-
have we shared? I mean, how many
Yeah.
mistakes have we shared?
Exactly.
Yeah,
But yeah, there's not that tension of,
yeah.
next time I see you at ResCon, I don't think you're gonna think I'm a failure if I bring something up to you.
Right.
But Caleb, on the other hand, it's a little different.
Caleb's got it all figured out.
Caleb does, look at him,
It's
look
like
at
you're in
him.
the midst of the failure.
Caleb, yeah.
I feel
Funny.
like, though, we have influence over that. Like, I think the
100%.
like parenting culture we have, like, we get to
Yeah.
create it.
Yeah, you do.
Uh-huh.
And it
Yes.
just could be so sweet if we recognize, like, I can tell you that we did something horrible, not horrible, like, didn't like beat up, but you know what I mean, like, we screwed up with this stage with
Yes.
Ray or whatever, and like, know confidently that even though you're in the same stage, you're not gonna like judge me.
Yeah.
Or if I feel like you do, to like come to you and be like, hey, did you think this? And you can say yes, or you can be like, well, you're wrong. So, you know what I mean? Like, I think that,
Yeah.
like you guys said, like, I
So
would
great.
hate for us to leave this season, which I think we're gonna, Lord willing, be in for a long time, and look back and be like, we didn't take advantage of it because we were insecure, or we were afraid,
Yeah.
or we weren't vocal.
So good.
I have a sweet memory. The church that y'all remind me of is when we had babies your age, when you were your age. And I remember very distinctly one day when my door burst open and this friend of mine came running in and she said, just a second. And she ran to my son's room and grabbed a diaper and ran back out. And she had come because her oldest kid was playing soccer and the baby had a blowout and she didn't realize it, but the diaper bag was empty. And so she immediately got up, ran to my house, did not knock, come in, and grabbed a diaper because we had that kind of relationship. Was it a fail that there were no diapers in the bag? Maybe, maybe not. But she didn't care. She knew where to come, and she was right. And those are the kind of relationships that y'all are cultivating with one another. We would always joke about, well, I lost my Mom of the Year card again. There goes my Mother of the Year trophy. We would. Those were things that we did.
You've mentioned a couple times, I think last night and then today as well, talking about like big decisions, and then also just looking for wisdom for schooling for your children. Those were the references I'm making. But referencing prayer and fasting, I think for myself, prayer is a normal spiritual discipline. Fasting seems more, I don't know, not practiced as much in my opinion, or at least from what I'm seeing and experiencing for myself. I'm just curious what your guys' practical practices are for fasting. I know when Jesus talks about it in Matthew, or talking to his disciples, he says, like, cover yourself with, or don't make it so the world can see that you're fasting. So how does that work
Don't
within
show
marriage?
off. Don't show
Yeah.
off, yeah.
How does that work within your marriage? And like what, I guess just practically, how have you guys done it? And is it a regular thing, or is it like we've got a big decision to make with moving our kids, so we need to fast in hopes that the Lord speaks?
I think we certainly could. It would be better if we done it as a more regular thing, but we've done it more around major decisions. And because I do have low blood sugar, I have to be careful about fasting. So it's not usually for several days, but it's maybe for a 24-hour period most of the time. Maybe there was a longer time that I don't remember, but it would be at least a couple of meals that instead of eating we would pray. And then I had to work through with fasting. It's not me trying to manipulate God to something. It's me wanting just to hear better from him and just making myself more available to him. And so, again, keep it pretty simple. And if it's something, just fasting, if it's something a person hasn't done before, I would say start by skipping one meal. Maybe skip dinner, have the evening, and then start the next day. But or then start with 2 meals or something like that. But when Jesus did say, he said when you fast, like there's an expectation to do that. So, yeah, but it's probably not as frequent or as regular as it should be or could be. But it's been helpful to us in major decisions. The Lord's used it.
There have been times where the fast wasn't from food, but from social media or TV or, however, you go as the Lord led. But the principle behind it is to devote the time you were spending on that thing, seeking the Lord in prayer, meditation of the scripture and that sort of thing. And so,
Yeah. Is that?
Yeah,
that
that's
help?
helpful. Yeah.
Molly and I fasted from TV, like as we were deciding where to move about a year ago. So was during Lent. We would not watch TV, and each night we'd pray. And we were just like, God, what do you want from our life? Like, we could do anything now. And we're really pleased with where he led us. So, yeah, that's a cool idea.
Our friend Paige Weiser has been in a life-threatening thing, and it was pretty bad. And our community group, we fasted for our community group meal, and we said instead of bringing
It's like our village.
food,
right?
yeah, our
Commu-
whatever
Missional community.
life group, whatever.
Life group.
You call them life.
So we said, instead of spending time preparing your side dish, dessert, whatever, spend your time seeking scripture, and then during our community group time, we're gonna take the scriptures that you brought, and we're gonna pray over those things. We
Instead of
had
eating.
chicken nuggets for the kids, but, so that's what we did, so that's another, if that,
Of doing that together.